So one of the wonderful things about America's charities is they're constantly looking for feedback. They're constantly looking to make a difference in the sector. So at this point, I really want this to be your conversation. I want you guys to ask questions of this panel, and let's just take that conversation in whatever direction it ends up going. So is there anybody that would like to start us off? Fantastic. Could you stand up and tell us who you are? Yes, we are. Someone's going to give you a mic. There we go. There you go.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, great. Okay. So the question of impact is I think, a really tough one for nonprofits, because you're kind of serving two masters. You're serving the programmatic imperatives and the funders' wants of what they want to measure. So for nonprofits, I think the question for you guys is, which is the master you should best serve? As a nonprofit, I would say programmatic imperatives, and then convince the funder why they're the most important measures. But and the other thing is that the place where impact measures have been measured best, I feel like, or most frequently, are in government grant programs, because they actually fund the review of the effectiveness of the program. So is there a model taken from government, of all places, to fund the review of these programs to get those impact measures you want, as opposed to telling the nonprofit you need to measure these things? So.
I'll let you tackle the first part. I do think that the programmatic imperative and what the organization is trying to change, what they're trying to fix, who they're trying to help, has to be the driver, the primary driver. But I do a fair amount of strategic planning for not-for-profit organizations, and working through that process, I always urge a kind of a practical mindset about that strategic plan and about those goals for impact within the community that they're trying to serve, to make sure that they're realistic on the one hand, and the organization actually has a chance to do this and can find the resources necessary, but also that it understands what the playing field is out there and who its funding partners might be. Secondary to that, and this is something that we might discuss a little bit more, is the idea of collective impact, which is driving so much of strategic planning for not-for-profits these days, and takes some organizations out of that sort of siloed view of what we are going to do in the next 5 years, and here's our report, and makes it a little bit more about coalition building. And one of my questions on the corporate side is, how can companies get involved, and will they get involved in terms of funding collective impact efforts? Now, I know the answer is yes, because I've seen some do it, but I think that's a trend, especially in the social services area, that is well worth watching.
I'll tackle the second part of that in regards to evaluation. So I agree, the traditional model of evaluation is to have your funder, especially government fund, a professionally third-party conducted evaluation. I think the reality is, as government funding sort of diminishes for many nonprofits, is that evaluation must be inexpensive. It must be something that nonprofits can do in-house without having to hire an outside consultant or a PhD. It's increasingly in real time. So at great nonprofits, as you guys know, your beneficiaries, your volunteers, even your donors can write a review about you anytime, at any point in the year. And what's different about that is, it's unlike an annual survey of, for instance, your beneficiaries that takes point in, maybe a year after the point where they actually receive service. That real-time feedback is much more relevant to the donor. Donors looking at evaluations from last year, that may not be as relevant to them. And so the reality, I think, is that we need to find inexpensive, if not free, and simple tools for nonprofits to collect evaluation metrics. And of course, the be all end all, the holy grail kind of double-blind randomized trial tests. That is the holy grail. But the reality is we don't have the funding for it in the sector, especially most nonprofits who are smaller.
I would say from our perspective, and certainly from what I hear from my peers and other corporations, is we realize that as we drive for this push for more measures and impact, that it comes with a cost. And so I think you'll see some of the corporations, the ones who are smartly engaging the space, recognize that that's not a cost that nonprofits can shoulder on their own, and setting aside some money for impact. I would agree on being smarter about how we do that, maybe funding one study and applying that to multiple programs, doing collective impact. I think there are some ways that we together can be much smarter about how we do it. And sharing the resources to do it has to be part of that dialogue, and it has to, you all need to be frank about it. So I think it's part of that evolution that we need to consider. And then to your first question, I would just say it's probably a blend. We pick you because of your programs and because of your impact, but we do have some things that we're trying to accomplish. So we have to figure out, maybe the middle ground that's a little heavier on the program side, but what can we do and what can be measured against some of the causes and the things that we may care about. But at the end of the day, we pick a nonprofit based on your existing programs or your existing ability to impact.